A quiet neighborhood, a steadfast store owner, and whispers of danger creeping closer. When shadows step through his door, Terran Walker knows this night will be different. The late afternoon sun draped a golden glow over Terrence Walker's neighborhood, where resilience thrived beneath every cracked sidewalk and faded storefront sign. His store, Walker's Market, stood like a sentinel at the corner of 5th and Maple, more than just a shop, but a cornerstone of the community. Behind the counter, Terran adjusted the security camera monitor, his sharp eyes scanning the feed out of habit. His military career was behind him, but the instincts of a special forces operative never faded. Every inch of the store bore his precision: meticulously placed goods, reinforced locks, and an alarm system wired into every vulnerable corner. This wasn't just a business, it was a lifeline, a place where neighbors didn't just buy groceries, they found safety, routine, and something familiar in a world that refused to stand still. Outside, the evening rhythm played on. A mother wrangling her toddler, an old man shuffling with his cane, teenagers vanishing around a corner in bursts of laughter. It was a symphony Terran loved, one that reminded him why he stayed. Then, the door chimed. A regular customer entered, offering a quick nod before heading to the back for milk. Terran returned the gesture, but his mind lingered elsewhere. He had heard the murmurs, rumors of intimidation, of small businesses like his being forced to sell under pressure from shadowy figures. He hadn't seen anything firsthand, but the tension was thick enough to taste. As the evening stretched on and the crowd thinned, Terran locked the door briefly to count the register, letting the silence settle in. He didn't know that just a block away, 3 men sat in an old pickup truck, their crude laughter masking something far more sinister. When he reopened the door, the first man stepped in with a swagger, his gaze sweeping the shelves with a mix of disdain and greed. The others followed, their presence carrying unspoken threats. Instincts sharpened. Terran's hand hovered near the counter. He wasn't just watching customers anymore. He was preparing for a storm. Some debts are paid in cash, others in fear. But Terran Walker isn't buying what these men are selling. Business could be better, though, Gary said, his voice cutting through the quiet aisles. You know, with the right kind of help. Terran didn't break eye contact, but he tracked Todd's movements in his periphery. We don't need any help, he said evenly. Gary let out a short laugh, shaking his head. That's the thing about people like you. Always so damn proud. Think you can do it all yourself. He leaned in slightly, his smirk sharpening. But let me tell you something, old man. Pride's expensive, and from where I'm standing, it looks like you can't afford it. Is that so? Terran replied, his tone unshaken. Mike, the lanky one near the door, chuckled nervously. Man, Gary, this guy's got balls, standing here all calm like we're just here to buy groceries. Gary shot him a look that shut him up before turning back to Terran. We're not asking for much, he said, his voice dipping into something almost friendly, almost reasonable. Just a small cut. A little fee, you know, to make sure nothing happens to this nice little store of yours. Terran straightened, his expression turning to stone. Nothing's going to happen to my store. For the briefest moment, Gary's smirk faltered. Then he forced a laugh. You hear that, boys? He thinks he's untouchable. He turned to Todd, motioning toward the shelves. Why don't you show him what happens to guys who don't want to play ball? Todd plucked a jar of sauce from the shelf, inspecting it like it was some rare artifact. This stuff's expensive, he mused, feigning curiosity. Think it'll break if I drop it? Terran's fists curled at his sides, but he stayed still, controlled. "You can leave now," he said, voice low and edged with steel. Gary raised an eyebrow, amused. "Leave? We just got here. And besides," he gestured to Todd. Grinning, Todd hurled the jar to the ground. It shattered on impact, dark red sauce splattering across the tiles. The sound hung in the air, thick and heavy. Terran didn't move, his gaze locked onto Gary's. "You're cleaning that up." His voice sliced through the tension like a blade. Todd laughed, stepping forward, glass crunching beneath his boots. "Oh, I don't think so, old man. But you can clean it up. That's what you're here for, right?" Near the door, Mike shifted uncomfortably. "Hey, maybe we should chill out, yeah? This guy doesn't look like he's gonna roll over." "Shut up, Mike," Gary snapped, his patience thinning. He turned back to Terran, his expression hardening. "We're doing you a favor, and you're spitting in our faces." Terran tilted his head slightly, his calm demeanor unshaken. "This isn't how things work around here," he said, "and you're not doing me any favors. All you're doing is making a mess." Gary exhaled a humorless laugh, resting his hands on his hips. "You hear that? This guy thinks he's got options." He leaned in, voice lowering to something almost menacing. "Let me tell you something, old man. You don't. Not with us. Not with what's coming." Terran's eyes narrowed. "What's coming?" Todd stepped closer, crossing his arms, his shadow stretching over the counter. They came with threats. They left with a warning. But Terran Walker knows. Some men don't listen until it's too late. "You'll find out soon enough," Gary said, his smirk laced with menace. "Unless, of course, you want to make this easy. Sell the store now. We know people who'd love to take it off your hands." Terran met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not selling. Not today. Not ever." Gary's smirk twitched. This time, frustration creeping in. "You're going to wish you did," he muttered. "We'll be back, old man. And when we come back, we're not going to ask nicely." Terran's voice dropped, low and lethal. "You've already made a mistake coming here. If you come back, it'll be your last." The weight of his words settled over the room like a cold fog. Even Todd hesitated, his bravado flickering for just a moment. For a second, it seemed like Gary might push further, might try to prove his dominance right then and there, but instead, he exhaled sharply and motioned to his crew. "Let's go." The three men moved toward the door, their departure slow, deliberate. One last attempt to intimidate, to make Terran second-guess himself. When the door finally shut behind them, silence crept in, thick and heavy. Terran let out a quiet breath. The storm hadn't struck yet, but he could feel it brewing on the horizon. Gary shook his head, smirking. "That's the thing about people like you. Always so proud. Think you can do it all yourself. But let me tell you something, old man. Pride's expensive, and from where I'm standing, it looks like you can't afford it." Terran didn't flinch. "Is that so?" His voice was steady, unwavering. Mike, the lanky one near the door, let out a nervous chuckle. "Man, Gary, this guy's got balls, standing there all calm like we're just here to buy groceries." Gary shot him a glare that shut him up before leaning in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We're not asking for much, just a little cut, you know. A small fee to make sure nothing happens to this nice little store of yours." Terran straightened, his expression hardening. "Nothing's going to happen to my store." His tone was firm, final. For a split second, Gary's smirk wavered. Then he forced a laugh, turning to his crew. "You hear that, boys? He thinks he's untouchable." He motioned to Todd. "Why don't you show him what happens to guys who don't want to play ball?" Todd grabbed a jar of sauce, turning it over in his hand. "This stuff's expensive," he mused. "Think it'll break if I drop it?" Terran's fists clenched, but his face remained unreadable. "You can leave now," he said, his voice low and steady. Gary raised an eyebrow, amused. "Leave? We just got here, and we're not done talking." He gestured to Todd, who grinned and hurled the jar to the floor. It exploded on impact, red sauce splattering across the tiles. The sound echoed in the tense silence that followed. Terran's gaze never wavered. "You're cleaning that up." His voice cut through the room like a blade. Todd laughed, stepping forward, glass crunching under his boots. "Oh, I don't think so, old man. But you can clean it up. Isn't that what you're here for?" Mike shifted uncomfortably. "Hey, maybe we should chill out. This guy doesn't look like he's gonna roll over." "Shut up, Mike," Gary snapped, eyes narrowing. "This guy needs to learn how things work around here. We're doing him a favor, and he's spitting in our faces." Terran tilted his head slightly, his calm unshaken. "This isn't how things work around here, and you're not doing me any favors. All you're doing is making a mess." Gary let out a humorless laugh, stepping back with his hands on his hips. "You hear that? He thinks he's got options. Let me tell you something, old man. You don't. Not with us. Not with what's coming." Terran's eyes sharpened. "What's coming?" Todd stepped closer, arms crossed, his bulk looming over the counter. "You'll find out soon enough. Unless, of course, you want to make this easy. Sell the store now. We know people who'd love to take it off your hands." Terran didn't blink. "I'm not selling. Not today. Not ever." Gary's smirk returned, but frustration lurked behind it. "You're going to wish you did," he muttered. "We'll be back, old man. And when we come back, we're not going to ask nicely." Terran's voice dropped, deadly calm. "You already made a mistake coming here. If you come back, it'll be your last." For the first time, silence fell between them. Even Todd hesitated. Gary's jaw tightened, but instead of pushing further, he exhaled sharply and motioned to his crew. "Let's go." Their departure was slow, deliberate, one last attempt at intimidation. But Terran just watched. When the door finally shut behind them, he let out a quiet breath. The storm hadn't struck yet, but he could feel it brewing on the horizon.